So, should be 5 seconds and we will be live. It's always wonderful. So, welcome to the Online Events Made Simple podcast. And we are live at the moment. So thank you so much, Steph and Jess. Thank you for joining me on this particular episode of the podcast show. So Jess, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hi. Well, thank you so much for having me on. My name is Jess Duxbury. I am digital producer at Aztec Live. You may know our company, those of you who work in events. We, Aztec, the regular branch of Aztec, do AV supply for a lot of lovely people. And yeah, I currently work for, I produce their digital content and digital events at the moment.
Wonderful, fantastic. And Steph?
Sure, hi, yeah, thanks for having me as well. My pleasure to be here. So I founded Social Isolation in March last year, which is like a fun virtual events company. So if an event's fun, we'll host it or we'll make it fun. So we particularly specialize in like party bingos and fun quizzes and all the sort of, you know, kind of events that you've probably attended at least one since March last year, haven't you, in all these lockdowns. So yeah, we host our own special versions of those, which are going really well. But I'm also a DJ, event host, and virtual event consultant.
Yes. Well. You see, I love this actually because, you know, we're all kind of on the production side and work behind the scenes, which is really handy sometimes to have that outlook and input on the podcast show and not just have, you know, event technology. I do love my event technology companies, don't get me wrong, but it is nice to have that behind the scenes experience and input into the process, because ultimately we are the ones that kind of put that elbow grease in quite often to make the event happen. So I wanted to ask you some kind of behind the scenes type questions. You know, tell me honestly, be totally honest, are virtual events easier or more difficult than your in-person events?
Oh, interesting question. Steph, do you want to go first?
I would just say they're different. I mean, it also depends on the event as well, doesn't it? I mean, so me hosting a party bingo virtually compared to me going to a venue, setting it all up in person, It is easier virtually for sure. I'm not going to pretend it's not, but you know, if it's, you know, this huge conference with thousands of delegates and loads of different breakout rooms and different speakers and all of that, you know, they're both difficult. They've both got their own challenges. And then, of course, you know, don't get me started on hybrid events, which I think is the most challenging. But yeah, they're just different, are they?
Yeah, I'd hard agree with Steph in that respect. I think hybrid is going to be, obviously we can't quite do it yet. I think that's going to be a real test of firstly what everyone has learnt, both attendee and production side of things. I think they're different is the right specification. I think the primary thing that I've noticed from the production side of it is that for a physical event, I'd say maybe 50% of the work occurs in advance and 50% of it happens on site. That build day is manic, the pressure, getting everything sorted on that day is really important. Whereas for virtual events, 95% of that work is done in advance. So, you know, that on the day stuff is about delivery only, not build, test, do all of this kind of stuff. So I think the thing that's been a real shock to the system, particularly of our clients and clients that have come on board since then, is understanding how much work they have to do before the event even happens. That's been a real shift and quite an interesting one to see, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what, Jess, is so, you know, I'm so crazy, but I literally just remembered when I came to do the IBTM talk, right? So Steph, and I just think, honestly, this whole prep thing, and I talk about it really openly and considering this is what we do, people probably think that I hate my job. I really do love it. But I do think that we have to be super honest with companies and clients about this upfront work involved. You know, it isn't, you know, I think particularly in the virtual space, it's the most unglamorous because you're in your room, in your office, in your room, you might have, you know, leggings and slippers on, like several screens set up. You're praying that your Wi-Fi does not go down because let's be real now, in your risk management report, your Wi-Fi needs to be listed there somewhere. it's stressful at times and really unglamorous. You know, you've got cups of tea somewhere, bottles of water. You know, you're trying to make sure that people don't just come into the room while you're at work working. You know what I mean? I try not to get distracted by people who are clearly parking in my drive. So it is it is very unglamorous, and your attention to detail. What are your thoughts, Steph, on the level of attention to detail that you need in this virtual space when you're managing attendees as well as speakers and your clients?
Yeah, it's a lot, isn't it? You made me laugh so much then. I am literally in leggings and slippers, and I've got tea and water bottles next to me. I've made it look nice, but beyond this, it's a mess. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's just, and like, you know, each platform is totally different. So depending on which platform you're using for a virtual event will depend on all the stuff you've got to do in the like hour leading up to it and then during it. And it's like, can one person do everything that needs to be done? Probably not. That's just in terms of tech as well. Like you might need one person letting people in from the waiting room, one person doing breakout rooms, one person doing polls. And like it, to someone who's not doing it, who doesn't know about this, they might think, how hard can it be? Yeah. But it's really hard. And also I think people's expectations are higher now of virtual events, like the timings. Yes. You know, like now if I'm the host and, you know, for example, Jess was doing the presentation slide for me, you know, they expect the presentation slide to be done and up like that second. There's no waiting time because nobody wants the awkward silence, do they? Like if you're in a venue, you can kind of laugh it off, the remote's broken or whatever. But it's just, and then like more than two people trying to speak, it gets awkward. Like there's just loads of pressure to make it really seamless. So yeah, the attention to detail is very crucial.
Yeah. Jess?
Yeah, I 100%. I think the thing with digital events is, as Steph pointed out, it's less forgiving and people are less forgiving, particularly now that we're, approaching a year of being in this state. People have done events themselves. They've done, you know, Zoom meetings and they've gone, well, how hard can it be? Because I did it with, you know, my parish group or something like this. And they then assume that what you're doing behind the scenes can't be that much more difficult. You know, I had a client early on that says, well, why should I pay for equipment if like it's not being used on site? And it's like, because we need to use it. Like we can do it via a smartphone if you want to, but I guarantee you a high definition camera is going to make you look a whole lot better. And also that, you know, that production value that's being added on. You know, if someone says, okay, I want to do an event and it's only a couple of presentation slides and someone talking to camera, and that's it, it's really straightforward. But, you know, they sit down with us and we go, okay, well, do you want some music in there to hype it up a little bit? Do you want a nice transition in and out? And we've got to factor in all of that, you know, the spreadsheets that we give to clients now and basically say, fill this in by this date, get everything here by this date. And they go, oh, okay, cool, we can do that. But we have to give that to them rather than the other way around. Yeah,
absolutely. And do you know what? A chill went down my spine when you said spreadsheet. Now, I do not like spreadsheets, but they are a necessary evil in this virtual event game because, you know, and I'm always on at the team about having shared folders, shared documents, you know, not clogging up emails with attachments, but having a central place whereby the information and resources for that client are deposited so that they can also access them as well. And so, yeah, it's the attention to detail. Now, Steph, tell us a little bit about, you know, making these events fun, because I can tell you for the production team, it's the least fun experience. I probably shouldn't be revealing all of these things, but behind closed doors, it's not that fun. But, you know, how do you make these events fun for attendees, at least?
Yeah, so when I'm doing like the parties, so like if I'm doing like a party bingo or a quiz, and like they could be, and so I do private parties for like birthdays and hen do's and stuff. I do corporate events, which is obviously like a whole totally different kettle of fish. And then third is I do pretty much every Saturday night an event open to the public. So it's three very different audiences, all with their various pros and cons. But so with those, it's kind of easier to make it fun because people are coming expecting it to be fun. So I'll just focus on that for a minute. So, you know, I'm making the games as interactive as possible. I don't like it when people have just got an audience sat in their living rooms, not being able to interact. So I've made sure the games are interactive. You know, with the bingo, people have their bingo board. It's a live game that they have to keep coming back to and paying attention. I play songs instead of reading out the numbers, so everyone's having a sing and a dance, and like almost everyone's dancing by the end, and they all text me after saying like, that's the most fun I've had. But like, you know, then if we flip it to more kind of corporate events, you know, conferences and stuff like that, it is difficult to make them fun. But that there are ways. I mean, Jess mentioned about like adding music. It sounds so simple, but loads of people don't bother. And it makes such a difference to have a bit of music while people are waiting or during the breaks or whatever, because otherwise it's just like silence. And it's really like, I hate an awkward silence anywhere.
Yeah.
But definitely not on an event that I'm hosting, or it just makes me feel uncomfortable. So definitely adding music, and it's really easy to do now, especially on Zoom. Love Zoom. I wrote down a couple of other bits, but I think also having like a charismatic host to keep everything tied together, definitely, that's another thing that's overlooked. Although I think people are understanding now it's essential. Just one, you know, person to tie it all in together. Just keeps it super interesting. And I guess last one from me would be, where's it gone? So there's a few, but like just adding different smaller elements. So things like, you know, launching a poll so that people have got something that they actually have to answer to, or, you know, sharing a video for a couple of minutes rather than just hearing the same person talk for ages. And it's all really simple stuff when you think about it, but it's quite hard to do, isn't it, Jess? Like to actually do virtually.
And you're talking about the element of a host, and I know Shanti's joking around with the fact that it's not that fun for a production team. A host can make it so much more enjoyable. You know, we hosted the Highways Awards a couple of weeks ago, and we had a guy called Colin Murray, who, again, I'm sure many people will know, and I've not worked with him before, and he made it so much fun. Again, someone who, you know, they had a couple of speakers that were really nervous, and when we tested them with him, he cracked a couple of jokes and made them feel that much more relaxed. And, you know, when we're running through adverts in a break, he'll be cracking jokes in our kind of in-ear pieces, and it makes you feel like a team, and it's very much like a theatre production in that way. And because I came to events from theatre, so this feels really similar to me. It feels very much it's a real team mentality. You've got to do a lot of stuff off the cuff, and you've got to have really quick reaction times. But it's that fun element that a host can really change, and it makes it more slick and more professional as well.
Absolutely. And it's really interesting that you talk about hosting, because there is also, I think, now a place for people who've been in theatre, as you said, Jess, and entertainers, because I think obviously they've been hit very hard by COVID. But in the virtual space, there is a place for them, even within corporate events, because if you are a comedian, if you are a magician maybe, or you are a performer of some type, you need that glue quite often to keep people engaged, you know, throughout a virtual event. And it does bring something different into people's kind of experience of your brand, even if it is your employees that you're putting on this event for.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
The amount of inventive, you know, virtual events that are out there now, and like, I don't mean like a full event, I mean like, you know, entertainment now. It's really impressive. I think there was a lot of reluctance during the first lockdown. People like, I'm just going to wait it out. And now we've all realised that, you know, almost a year in, as Jeff said, you know, who knows how much longer it's all going to be going on like this. And I think even after the hybrid events, there's still going to be scope for people to be doing these virtual experiences at home. Like, I've seen some really incredible stuff.
And it shows a production company or a company itself caring about what their attendees are going to see. Like, it's going, you know, I genuinely care. Your time, I think if there's one lesson that I've learned, and I know a lot of people have learned throughout this last year, is that your time and your energy is more valuable than ever. So for a company to turn around and say, you know, we've got this host for you, we've got these games for you, it's that level of care and attention which I think people really appreciate, and that's been very apparent.
Absolutely. And I think this is really key, Jess, because one of the questions I wanted to ask you is about the value that you've seen, or the value that maybe your clients are now placing on what you do beyond just the technical. You know, tell us a little bit about that. How has that changed over the last year in terms of the interaction that you're having with clients now?
Yeah, I think, you know, I've been very honest with my journey into virtual with people. And, you know, my company, we're in the place that a lot of companies were, which is, you know, we either fail now or we try something new and possibly fail in the future. And they chose the latter, and we decided to kind of go headfirst into the world of virtual events. And my role wasn't a role before. I basically stepped forward and said, I produced theatre for a really long time. It's what I do. I can work on the fly, and I'm really good with your clients. So, you know, give me a chance to do that. And I think every single one of our clients has come forward and said, I don't know what to do, please help. And it's made, there's kind of this wall that's come down. And I think in the events industry as a whole, there's a lot of ego and a lot of that feeling that's gone out of it, because everyone is so vulnerable, automatically so vulnerable. And we're collaborating a lot more, and a lot of the clients coming to us and just saying, help, tell us what to do. And we're telling them that, and they're putting a hell of a lot of trust in us, and showing us a lot of vulnerability, and us to not take advantage of that and to really help them. So it feels like a much more collaborative process from the beginning, because we say, okay, well, this is what we'd suggest doing. If you have your own ideas, that's great. Whereas, you know, pre-pandemic, it was very much, this is how we're doing, you know, make it work. Which has been really interesting. But I think also the downside of that is that a few companies have done that the wrong way around. And because they've done it to people who are very vulnerable in an incredibly vulnerable time, those will be remembered. And I think that's the line that's been drawn this past year.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many things that you said there. You know, here's the thing, and you know, this podcast really is for those companies and those stakeholders who aren't the traditional conference producers, exhibition organizers, who've now been tasked with taking meetings and events online. And we really just want to open up what it's really like for all of the players involved. And what you talked there about vulnerability and the need to collaborate, and the fact that, you know, 80% of this whole market is learning as they go along, essentially. And you learn something new from every new and different client that comes across your path. That is so true. And also, I mean, one of the things that I believe is going to be happening over the next 2 to 3 months, for example, is the great switch. And I'm going to be talking much more openly about this soon on LinkedIn, that, you know, where people purchased technologies or created partnerships this time last year, you know, a lot of them now are going to come up for renewal. And I think that we will see a lot of change and movement happening in the market, because it has matured, and people are going to remember maybe some of the more negative or unpleasant experiences that they had, and make choices accordingly as to who they now do business with now, especially with monetization becoming a little bit clearer. You know, people are going to be making choices about who they work with. Steph, what has it been like for you from a supplier point of view? You know, how have you found finding clients, you know, and approaching brands and being able to demonstrate that you are the best solution partner?
It's all been like really quite organic, I guess. So I just started doing these events in March last year because I didn't have another job. I'd just gone traveling in January. Yeah. And I'm the kind of person that's like, I'll just quit my job, go away for a month, come back, get a new job. And normally that would be fine, but then there was the pandemic. So, you know, there were no jobs to apply for, people being furloughed left, right and centre. So I was like, I'll just do some virtual quizzes and bingos and stuff. And I've been a quiz host for like 10 years. So it wasn't totally new to me. I'd used Zoom a little bit beforehand, but I just very quickly learned how to use it and utilise it. I was just doing them for like friends and family and just having a bit of fun. And then a friend of mine works at Fever Up, who do like Secret London and all the secret cities. And they were like, you know, we really need to get some more virtual events up, because obviously all their event sales stopped. And they were like, we'd love to get your bingo up. And I was like, really? I was so surprised. But, you know, that was just a doubt in myself. It was actually really fun. And then, you know, they were selling hundreds of tickets each week to the games I was doing. And then from that, you know, people that played and had fun would email me and say, you know, oh, can you do my work social, or can you do my friend's birthday party? And it's all just like snowballed from that. So almost all of my clients have been through like word of mouth. Wow. Yeah, it's been really good. I tried a few Facebook adverts and stuff to zero success, not a fan. It's all about word of mouth. And I'm just really lucky, I guess, that I had those games open to the public with lots of attendees that just meant I was reaching a really big audience.
Yes.
So then, you know, over summer it all quietened down on the public event side, because obviously the sun was out, we could go out, go and enjoy it while you can, people. But then it picked up with the corporates and the private parties in the late half of the year. So, you know, when I got an email from like someone from Amazon, you know, which Bank of England, I was like, oh my God, really? Like, it just blew my mind. But you know what? It just shows that if you have a good product and you do it well, and the people want it, and it's so, yeah, I'm really happy. Just hoping it continues. So, you know, I have reached out to clients, sort of, not like cold calling per se, but a little bit of that, and I've got a little bit of traction from it. But I've found that, yeah, it's just someone has to have been to the event and recommend it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that speaks to the trust element now as well. You know, trust is a huge part, I think, as we move forward, because a lot of it is unknown. Essentially, it's new and it's uncertain. So generally speaking, people are looking for trusted relationships with kind of references, you know, testimonials, that kind of thing, really, isn't it? And I think what's interesting is, because I've got to say, Jess, I have seen Aztec come up in my email thread a lot over the last year, which is a real
really good.
A lot of our clients, because if we're not doing, you know, content production, etc., they're usually partnering with a partner to get that done. And Aztec has come up in my thread quite a few times. And I'm interested to know whether or not you have done any proactive marketing, or whether indeed it has been a lot of word of mouth as well, and consistent business.
Yeah, I think there's definitely been a few clients that have come back from the before times, and have come back and said, you know, we want to try. I think your comment, Ashanti, about that renewal period, that moment of transition between, okay, do we dip our toe in, or do we go all in? You know, waiting for that moment of realization. And I think a lot of our clients were waiting for, you know, either the entire company had been put on furlough until, you know, January of this year or November of last year, and are now kind of starting to come back. Because they were just in a holding pattern until things change, and now they've realized that things might not change as quickly as possible, so are now approaching. There's been certainly some advertising, but again, it's been mostly social media. We've launched a new branch of the company, which is Aztec Live, which used to be just our kind of awards and events in that area, rather than conference and exhibition side of things. But now it's become our production arm. So again, we have a lot of close client relationships. Unfortunately, and I think that's been particularly sad over the last year, of, you know, events and exhibition is a very kind of close-knit village almost of people, and a lot of the people that have lost their jobs and the companies that have got under are close friends of ours. That's been a really tough point, and especially as our business has started to pick up in this new exciting way, it's a little bit bittersweet, because you're doing without some of those key people. But definitely it's a good mixture of word of mouth, particularly, and especially the events from companies who were doing it as like a first time try to test the water before they go and announce further things.
Yeah, absolutely. And what advice can you give for a company who are unsure as to the value of partnering with an organization like Aztec, number one, and number two, is there anything they need to do, or what can they expect when they work with a company like yours in terms of, you know, the experience itself?
Sure. I mean, firstly, I would say don't feel like you're on the back foot in coming to a different company. You're not, you know, as I say, 90% of the clients that come to us have come to us going, we have no idea what we're doing. And a lot of the operations teams that we work with for years, who are, you know, absolute kind of legends within the industry, have felt kind of they've had their wings clipped, and it's been a little odd. Firstly, I would say for those companies, you are not alone. This is new for absolutely everyone. And don't be afraid of just coming to us and having a conversation and chatting through. You know, it's no longer the case of, if you talk to us, we must charge you for everything. We're totally happy to chat through and talk through ideas. And part of what my role is as a producer is starting that conversation and telling you what we can and can't do. So come to us with all your ideas, bring them to us, tell us what you think you want, and, you know, what's crucial, would maybe be fun to do, and then we can go from there. And I'd say, to speak on what they would experience coming to us, you know, we are there to take over the production side of their event. You know, they are involved every step of the way in creative decisions. We can be as involved in those creative decisions as they want us to. If you want to give me the reins and I can make it look however I want to, I'm fine with that. Get ready, it's going to be good. But if you have a creative team, if you have a marketing team or a sales team that's promised to pitch the show a certain way, we can do that. It's, you know, treat this more like a television production. You know, you can have rolling sponsorship between sessions. You can have literal adverts going on, which you can sell. So there's a different way to do this. There's still the same way to approach sponsors and targeted things within your show. It's just a slightly different thing. Just shift your thinking and you can do whatever you need to.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that, Jess. And Steph, lastly, I mean, I'm interested on your viewpoint. You know, how do you think there will be a time where exciting, creative and fun kind of host experiences will no longer be in demand in the way that they're in now? You know, we don't know what the future holds, but how do you think hosts like yourselves, for example, can make themselves more accessible to the brands that they, or companies really, that they would like to work with?
Good question, and this is something I think about all the time. Because you know, as much as I would love to click my fingers and like pandemic over and we can all go back out in the world, it is a bit scary because I've spent the last year being fully virtual, doing virtual events, virtual hosting, still building up like my brand and stuff, and I'm sure that won't just disappear once we go back to sort of the in-person events. But you know, it is a bit weird because maybe it will. But I just think, you know, there's always going to be the events there, whatever they are. They're not going to go. They're going to be here one way or another. They're going to be virtual, hybrid, in person, and no matter which one you have, you're always going to need an event host, I think. And if you don't have one, you're doing it wrong. I'm so glad you two agree with me on that, because I think people just think I'm saying it so that like
they'll give you
hire me or something. But it's true. And you know, also I've worked like, you know, behind the scenes on events as well, where there's another event host, and it just makes so much difference, as we say. So I think there's always going to be the need there. I think it's so like, I think we're going to have virtual events for a good few more months. I do think come summer again, there's going to be that dip, and you know, there's not that many events happening in the summer anyway, apart from festivals usually. But yeah, I'm thinking like come hybrid events, sort of end of the year next year, and then back in person. I think there's going to be a huge demand for a while anyway. People are desperate to go out and do stuff. So I'm hoping, you know, it'll all boom and then bounce out again. That's my hope and my forecast.
No, fantastic. Well, thank you, Jess and Steph, for joining us on this particular episode of the Online Events Made Simple podcast. We know that time is precious, but our mission is to simplify, essentially, online events for people as much as possible. And today, I know I've gotten you to give us some behind the scenes reality of being a part of virtual events. And for anyone listening, if you're listening live or you catch this on demand or any of the podcasting channels that we are available on, if you do have any questions, please do pop us an email, but also you'll be able to find Jess and Steph because all of their details will be in the show notes. So until next time, everyone, take care.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.